All right, guys, Mr. Sherwin here. I wanted to give you a little help on tomorrow's session 2, which is the writing session. We didn't get a chance to really get into this like I wanted to, but I wanted to give you some hints. A lot of people get turned off by the writing section. They think it's too challenging, and I don't want you to freak out about it tomorrow. So I just want to give you a few hints on what you can do to get a better score on the writing section. So if you'll take this minute or so to watch this short video, I'll kind of walk you through what you should do, okay? So what this is, if you remember right, last week we looked at the practice test. And on the writing section tomorrow, this will not be the topic, but what you should understand is, remember, there's 4 multiple choice questions that are worth a point apiece. So anybody can answer those without writing a thing over here. So these are going to be based on the sources. So make sure you get these 4 right, or at least most of them right. And then if you don't get an awesome score on the writing section, it's not that big of a deal. Okay? Everybody in here, though, can get at least 1 or 2 points on the writing section. So what I did was I made a question. I made some sources, and I'm going to show you what you should do tomorrow on the test. So if you would, pay attention. Here we go. So here's our question. It says, using your knowledge of U.S. history and the sources provided, answering the following question. Evaluate whether the actions taken by presidents during the Cold War were justified during the mid to late 19th century. And to get all the points, you must address all parts of the prompt, include information and examples from your own knowledge of U.S. history, use evidence from the sources to support your answer, and follow the steps on the checklist as you write your response. So first of all, let's look at the question. It says evaluate. Okay, it doesn't say list or identify, so you're going to have to look at the sources and use your own knowledge. Actions taken by presidents, okay? During the Cold War, justified. So you could either use actions taken by presidents and say they were not justified. You could say that the actions taken by presidents were justified. Doesn't matter how you frame your response, but you have to make sure that you answer all parts, okay? So you're going to need to mention some actions taken by presidents during this Cold War. So remember the period from 1945 to about 1990. And then again, justified. Okay, do you think we were right in what we did? So now that we've identified sort of the important stuff, so if you look here, evaluate, important. Okay, we got actions taken, Cold War, justified, and might even underline mid to late 19th century. These are the important parts that we need to go ahead and do, okay? So before we even look at our sources, what you want to do, you're going to do this part right here, own knowledge, okay? My own knowledge. What do I currently know about these things? Okay, so let's go back. Don't forget presidents. So let's see what you know, okay? So on your blank sheet of paper, probably the most important thing is you're going to write down Cold War, okay? And then you want to just do what they call a brain dump. You want to mention everything that's in your head about this particular topic. So if tomorrow it's a topic on civil rights, you want to mention things like Martin Luther King and Montgomery Bus Boycott, Malcolm X. If the topic is on the Industrial Revolution, you want to mention like child labor and unions and working conditions. If it's on World War II, you're going to mention things like D-Day and Operation Overlord, which is the same thing. You're going to mention things like Nazis, and you're going to mention stuff like Japan and all the Allies versus Axis. So we're doing Cold War now, so let's just brain dump whatever we know. So communism. Forgive my writing. I'm trying to write and use the camera at the same time. Cold War. Okay, let's go containment. Okay, and then the presidents. Okay, maybe we can put, see, Truman. And then Eisenhower. And then we'll put JFK. And we'll put Nixon. And we'll put Ford. And we'll put, who else is in here? Reagan. Okay, probably forgetting a few folks, and that's okay, okay? As you're writing, if you want to jot down a few ideas too. So Cold War and Truman, well, what was his thing called? His thing was called the Truman Doctrine. Okay. Okay. Eisenhower and all 3 of these guys had something called the domino theory. Okay. Truman had the Marshall Plan. Okay. JFK did something called the Bay of Pigs, if you remember where that was. Okay, it was in Cuba. Okay. Speaking of Cuba, Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay. Nixon, he did something called Détente, which you probably don't remember, and that's okay. But the big thing about Nixon, what did he do in the Cold War that was such a big deal? He actually went to China. A huge deal, okay? Went to China, okay? Ford, what did he do? He basically ended all involvement in Vietnam. Okay, let's see. Reagan, what did he do? That big thing. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Okay, he's responsible for what being torn down? Tear down Berlin Wall. Okay, so for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So you see what the brain dump is. Everything on that particular topic. In this case, actions taken. We've got a few of those. We've got the presidents. We've got the Cold War. And then basically now you're going to look at the sources. So let's look at our sources and see what they are. Okay. First source. Actually, this is source 3. It should be source 1. But it says stretching his legs. Okay, notice what's going on. We've got the key up here. We got this guy, and he's trying to stretch out. Okay, let's look at the second source. Okay, this one should be source 2, but it's Dwight D. Eisenhower, The Industrial Complex. Got a quotation, maybe it'll be a reading passage. Look at our third source. Nikita Khrushchev versus John F. Kennedy. We've got two people arm wrestling on top of some missiles. Okay. And the last one, we've got the TV Guide cover of Nixon shaking hands with some dude. Looks like he visited China. Okay. So what you would do after this point is you would, ask yourself, were we justified? Were we not justified? Okay. This one is about containment. If you remember, Truman had this idea first of containment, something called the Truman Doctrine. The Marshall Plan, if you remember right, what did we do with the Marshall Plan to stop the spread of communism? We spent billions of dollars preventing communism from spreading into Western Europe. Okay, were we justified in doing that? Were we justified in having taxpayers pay that much money? Well, it worked, so I guess it would be justified, okay? This one's about the military-industrial complex. This is about America spending too much money on building up our military, okay? If you were against this, you would say, well, we're spending entirely too much money trying to bankrupt the Soviet Union. Or you could say, well, we are doing the right thing. The industrial complex is a good thing because we are going to bankrupt the Soviet Union in the Cold War, okay? This one, what happened here? You got to think back. What happened here between this guy and this guy? Well, the Bay of Pigs. We tried to overthrow Castro. Were we justified in that? John F. Kennedy. What happened in 1962? The Cuban Missile Crisis. Were we justified in blockading Cuba? Were we justified in having this standoff that lasted 13 days, where in the end we made him move his missiles from Cuba, where he moved his missiles from Turkey, okay? All right. And the last one, this one's real simple. This one's just a TV Guide source of Richard Nixon meeting with a guy named Mao Zedong in China. He's the first president ever to visit China when it became communist. Big deal. Was he justified in doing that? What's the results of that? Well, you might think we have a much better relationship with China. We have a lot of goods that we trade with China. We have everything that's made in China. The shirt on your back right now is probably made in China, okay? So again, just real brief, sort of to catch up, use the sources, okay? Use your own knowledge, sort of what they call a brain dump, and identify what you're supposed to be answering. And this is going to help you tremendously on the actual writing section tomorrow. Good luck, guys. Love you. Sherwin out.